Hey guys, welcome back to part 2 of 3 for this podcast episode, which is episode number 9, where I am talking about the X-Men, my love for them, and all that. So in the first part, I basically discussed the origin of how I discovered them, how the original team basically was found, like as far as its founding members, gave a little bit of a, knowledge on that. Then I discussed how basically, I discussed the first X-Men film that I actually watched and how I felt like I wasn't really knowledgeable or educated enough as a fan at the time to appreciate that film. But in gradual time, I eventually learned more and more about the X-Men as I continued to be a fan, did research, watched shows, played video games, all that sort of thing. So in this particular part of the podcast in part 2, I also mentioned in the first part who my favorite X-Man was, which I said was Storm. And I said why. She's not my only favorite X-Man, but I just basically let you guys know that she was basically my favorite. If I have to say who my second is, I'm not sure. I feel like it could be between Jean Grey or Rogue, but it may be Rogue, like the comics version of Rogue, obviously. But it's like, sometimes I'm not always completely sure about that, because I feel like I want to say Jean Grey, but it's like, do I really appreciate Jean Grey, or it's like, do I more so appreciate her transformation with the Phoenix and all that? Like, I don't know if Jean Grey, like if she was just always Jean Grey and Jean Grey alone, I don't know if I would fully appreciate her like the way I do, knowing that she has everything that comes with her. Which is funny that I'm mentioning that, because that is what I want to discuss today. My favorite X-Men storyline of all time, which is the Phoenix and the Dark Phoenix saga. Mind you, they are literally two different stories within themselves. Like, one part is the Phoenix saga, and then the second part is the Dark Phoenix saga, but they're not all told like together. Like, they're literally their own separate sagas. So, but I have to include them both just because I feel like they kind of do go hand in hand. Because one basically causes the other. So, with the whole concept of the Phoenix saga is when the X-Men Marvel Girl, or Jean Grey, basically, the idea is that she essentially sacrifices her life for the X-Men in space during like a space mission, and as a result of her doing so, she's introduced to a cosmic entity in space that is like super powerful, known as the Phoenix Force. And I feel like I'm to this day, I'm still learning about the X-Men and the true origins of these stories, because I didn't even know, like, the way it was always presented was like the Phoenix Force forced her way into Jean. But what I had to learn was that the Phoenix Force came to Jean while she was in the middle of trying to sacrifice herself for her team, trying to save the team. And basically the Phoenix Force made a deal with Jean that Jean actually agreed to, where it was like, okay, I see you're trying to use your power to save your friends, but, you're not powerful enough. You're clearly not going to make it. The deal was basically that she would allow the Phoenix Force to enter her, and the Phoenix Force would help her save her friends. They would get home safely. But basically, like, she would have to inhabit her body, and I forget exactly what may have been said. Like, I don't know if the Phoenix basically said, like, this could potentially corrupt you, or like, whatever. But it was basically a deal that was made, and Jean agreed to it basically so she could save her teammates. That was her MO. So this happens, right? Phoenix Force enters her. They end up, steering the shit back to Earth as safely, I guess, as possible, because the shit still ended up crashing, like, into the water. And so what happens is Jean ends up rising from the water, from the lake, the river, wherever they're at, and she literally rises into the air, flying as the Phoenix in a whole new costume, declaring that she is Phoenix. And it basically turns into a situation where Jean's full potential is unlocked. Like, Jean Grey is a telepath who can read minds, communicate mentally, even control minds. And she's a telekinetic, meaning that she can move things with her mind. As the Phoenix, like, this ability is amplified to unimaginable levels. Like, I think her telepathy is advanced to the point where, like, she doesn't even have to read a person's mind to know what they're thinking. Like, it's almost like she can feel it. She's just, like, powerful on a whole nother level. Like, her powers rival that of Professor X, who's considered the most powerful telepath on Earth. Like, she's really stronger than him, actually, with the Phoenix Force. And as a telekinetic, I mean, her ability to manipulate matter and object, that shit goes to a whole nother level, where it's like she can even manipulate molecules to the point where it's like she can just disintegrate a fucking another person. Like, can you imagine that level of being a telekinetic? Like, everyone knows the conspiracy of being a telekinetic means that you can move things with your mind. But imagine being so masterful at it that you can literally manipulate the molecules in a fucking person. Like, that's like insane levels of power. So it's like, basically, with her as the Phoenix, she becomes super powerful. And it's like this transformation of Jean, essentially. But not a complete or a corrupt transformation. Just more of like, okay, like, she's realizing the true or the full extent of her power, while also discovering these new powers because of the Phoenix Force. And it's really this storyline behind, it's all revolved around space. Like, there's this thing about this crystal and the M-Cron crystal that holds all this power in the universe and stuff. And I think Phoenix is supposed to be like the protector or the guard of it or something like that. And there's someone out in space. There's like a whole nother group where, someone's trying to basically be corrupt with the crystal. And Phoenix ends up being the one to kind of like save the day and, I believe, restore the crystal so that, the guy trying to get it doesn't basically destroy the whole fucking universe. So it's like Phoenix is actually a hero in the beginning. Like, she's not immediately a villain. Phoenix is not just like this evil character. Like, no, Phoenix actually, I feel like, was basically an upgraded Jean Grey for a while, like for a bit. And it's funny because Phoenix is actually how I met Jean Grey. It was how I was introduced to Jean Grey in X-Men Mutant Academy, because her version of Jean in that game, she was not Jean Grey, she was Phoenix. They had her in the game as Phoenix. So it made me, like, first of all, she was actually one of my favorite characters in the game. It was Storm and Phoenix. And I think I might have actually liked Phoenix a little bit more than Storm at the time. I don't know. I just know that they were the top two. I just thought she looked so beautiful, so unique. Like, I loved the red hair, the long red hair, the outfit. I loved her powers, the pyro telekinesis, whatever the fuck that shit's called. But I loved the Firebird. Like, I just loved everything that was Phoenix. I just felt like she always came off so mystical and special. Like, so I think that's what I'm saying. When I ended up watching X2, I didn't even realize the whole time right away that Jean Grey was who I thought Phoenix was. Like, I think I saw Jean Grey and was confused. Like, who the fuck is this? Like, where's Phoenix? Whole time she basically is Phoenix. And it's funny because during that movie, that was kind of like her backstory. It was like, it was this whole thing about her powers growing and evolving at the time. And eventually, you know, she sacrificed herself, funny enough, at the end of the movie. And it basically hints and leads towards the Phoenix Saga. So that's so ironic that, like, that would be the first film that I would watch. And whole time didn't even realize in the beginning that, like, this was supposed to be the Phoenix. Because she also had a shorter cut. Like, I really just don't know what the fuck I was thinking. Like I said, again, I'm 7 or 8. So getting into how she eventually became the Dark Phoenix, this is really my favorite part of the whole saga. Basically, it becomes a situation where she eventually becomes corrupt because she ends up getting manipulated by this supervillain called Mastermind, who realizes the power of the Phoenix, and him and this, you know, villainous group called the Hellfire Club decide that they want to try to control the Phoenix and use her for their, you know, twisted plans or desires. They want to make her a member of their circle. But baby, they didn't realize what they was fucking with, because they was able to manipulate Jean for a minute, but it's like the Phoenix is too powerful. Like, you're not going to be able to control and manipulate the Phoenix forever. Like, you were able to do it based on the fact that, you know, you technically were toying with Jean Grey's mind. You know what I mean? She's still inhabiting a human body. But baby, it was to the point where they even got Jean to turn against the X-Men. But when she broke out of the manipulation, it was almost like she experienced such rage and just so many emotions going through that whole process with that man, of him manipulating her to think that, you know, he was her lover. Just all this bullshit. It turned her dark. Like, it turned her evil. And then she became the Dark Phoenix and became mad. Like, she basically killed Mastermind, drove him insane by making him feel what it is to be a god, essentially. Like, because that's basically what the Phoenix is. Like, she's a cosmic entity, but she has godlike power. So it's like she basically shitted on him and was like, you know, you want to manipulate me, you want power so bad. Like, let me show you what it really is like to be all powerful. And she essentially basically drove the man insane, and I think killed him in the process. Like, and just thinking of that alone is like sick. But eventually, like, when I say she became dark, like, she fought the X-Men, like, she turned on them, and just basically became this whole being of, like, joy, rage. Like, she was just power hungry. And she fought the X-Men, beat them easily, like, just basically fucking, like, they tried their damnedest to take her down, you know, but Phoenix was way too powerful at that point. So she basically easily defeats the X-Men. Doesn't kill them, though, because apparently, even though that was her original intent, Jean is still somewhat in control. Like, it is her body. So I think she's still... It's like she's almost holding the Phoenix back in a way from completely destroying the people that she loves. So eventually she literally freaking leaves the Earth to go up into space as the Cosmic Phoenix Firebird and explores the cosmos. She destroys a star that inhabits a planet in a galaxy, and kills like an entire civilization of people in the process. So after this, it's deemed that she's like way too fucking powerful. Like, she has to be destroyed. And even though we know it's the Phoenix Force that's controlling Jean, it's like once she comes back to Earth, and the X-Men have like another battle with her, and between like I believe it was Nightcrawler who had something that he tried to put around her. Like it was like a series of events in the battle that led to the Phoenix eventually being contained. So Professor X and Jean Grey worked together basically to mentally cage the Phoenix for a while at least and allow Jean to have control. But it was like at that point it was too late, and then there was, this team that came from space and basically said like, we don't give a fuck about the fact that, y'all basically might have contained the Phoenix for now. Like basically Jean Grey has to die, honey, because the Phoenix is inhabiting her body and she's way too fucking dangerous at this point to like even exist. Like the threat of her pose is too big to just even allow Jean Grey to live. Like basically this bitch just killed a whole motherfucking planet of people. Like we can't just let this rock. So, the X-Men obviously wanting to fight for Jean Grey, they were challenged on space and basically lost the fucking battle to their group. And what ended up happening was the Dark Phoenix came back, tried to cause hell again on space, and eventually they had to, like, I believe Jean, she sacrificed herself again when she had like some semblance of control. I believe Cyclops had something to do with it too, as far as like, maybe helping her with the sacrifice, or I'm not sure. I feel like sometimes the story is told in different ways. I just know overall I love the story. Like I love how she transforms from, like I said, Jean Grey to the Phoenix and to eventually the Dark Phoenix. I love the whole dynamic of there's this idea that, Jean Grey may have been one of the weaker members of the X-Men, or one of the, not most important members, if that makes sense. But it's like, it basically tells the story of how a superhero goes from being considered the weakest member on the team to the most powerful member on the fucking team, possibly the fucking universe. And even her personality transformation, like going from the insecure, the quiet, the more shy, reserved Jean Grey to the confident, the bold, the almighty, powerful Phoenix, and to the evil, corrupt, power-hungry Dark Phoenix. Like, that transformation is just something so intriguing to me, and obviously to a lot of X-Men fans, because like I said, it's a classic at this point. So, yeah, that's just definitely my favorite X-Men storyline of all time. I feel like if there's an idea of a similar comparison, I mean, you can probably compare it to the story of Carrie. How, obviously Carrie was known as like the sweet girl who was bullied. Not that Jean Grey was bullied, but I'm just saying, her demeanor, her energy, you guys probably never would have expected, that girl to end up doing what she did at the end of the movie. And she essentially turned dark. And I feel like that's basically the concept of the Phoenix story. Now, I know it's been adapted, like in the cartoon, it was adapted pretty well. Like I know a lot of fans, that's their favorite adaptation of the Phoenix and Dark Phoenix saga. When it comes to the films, it was a disappointment for most fans, unfortunately. Especially considering, like I said, it is considered like a fan favorite storyline. A lot of people were looking forward to it being adapted, and it just was disappointing the two times that it was, between X-Men 3 and the actual X-Men Dark Phoenix movie that came out years later. Now, what I will say is, there's debate, I guess, between the two films, which one is worse. I feel like some people think that the original X-Men 3 film is actually somewhat better than the Dark Phoenix film that did mainly focus on the Dark Phoenix saga. But I disagree. I actually think the Dark Phoenix film is a bit better than X-Men 3, just because at least the saga had more focus like it should have. And I feel like, I don't know, there's just something about the movie overall that I think comes off a little bit better than X-Men 3. Like, I just feel like with X-Men 3, like, I don't know. Like, X-Men 3, like, I don't even think X-Men 3 is as bad as some people thought it was. It definitely could have been a way better movie, but I don't think it was just like this horrible ass movie like everybody was making it out to be. But I definitely do see where people feel like obviously it didn't stand up to the first two films, especially the second film that basically took the first film to another level. So it's like, you obviously hope with each film it continues to elevate and elevate. But, after X-Men 2, fans started to believe that there was actually a decline in the film series. So, what you gonna do? But basically, I feel like I'm already going over time. I just wanted to give you guys the gist and let you know that the Phoenix and the Dark Phoenix saga are my personal favorite X-Men storylines of all time. And, I know people don't really like how the movies turned out, but I have hope that eventually, years down the line, hopefully now with the MCU, the universe, they can get the Phoenix saga and the Dark Phoenix saga right. And I do think that in due time, everything will come together the way that it should. So, yeah, if you guys have any comments, thoughts, concerns, leave them down below. Please like the video if you are a fan of the Phoenix and the Dark Phoenix saga and you liked what I had to say about it, my coverage. I know I kind of gave like a brief overview. I might have skipped a lot of shit that people felt like was important, but like I said, I don't want to make these videos, these podcasts too long. So I just basically wanted to give the gist of the storyline, things that stood out to me and what I liked about it. So yeah, I'll see you guys in part 3 to basically give you guys my overall of how I feel about the X-Men, their main objective, and how I feel like I relate to that as a person in my own, life battles, struggles, fights, and all that, what have you. So thank you guys again for listening, whoever does listen, and see you guys in the final part of the trilogy.